Hello my nasties. It's your boy Nasty Jack back on the pack. So yeah, I really just wanted to thank you guys so much for all of your support. I love each and every one of you. Except Stan. Wow, don't even get me started. I hate that guy so much. Wow, I'm about to bust a nut over how angry that lame boy makes me. Frick that dude. Anyway, I don't want to keep you guys waiting, so I guess I'll just jump right into the dang thing. Yeah, my duties. The Scary House. Chapter 9. The Confrontation. I gasped like this hoo-hee-haw because I was so bummed out at the sight of Mr. Mike's gosh darn flipping house. How it was still here escapes me, but at this point I'm just going with the float like a little goldfish cracker swimming down my esophagus down into my belly only to be pooped out 8 days later. So yeah, I looked at Sally and was like, what the frick, how are we here? She let out a little fart and expressed her annoyance just the same. Yeah, this is totally whack. I thought the house blew up like twice already, she said. Sally tucked the piece of paper with the spell on it that Abigail gave her into her pocket, and I slipped the magical dagger into the knife sheath I always have strapped to my ankle. It fit so snugly like a little snug bug. Gosh, it looked so cute. Well, I looked up at Sally. Your great-great-great-great-grandmama must have sent us back to before the house blew up. Okay, that wasn't enough greats, she replied, but please continue. Yeah, there were too many greats so I couldn't remember, I said. I wonder if we'll run into our past selves from when this all began. Right as I said that, I heard the sound of a bicycle in the distance. I looked over my shoulder and saw my literal past self riding that dang BMX bike down the street. Oh shoot, I said, this is about to get real wacky. Sally and I hid behind the tree that was in Mr. Mike's yard. We watched from afar as Pickle Rick approached my past self, talked to him about the house and then gave him the key. It was so surreal I let out a tiny little poopy in my whitey tighties. Once Pickle Rick disappeared, I made my move. I started running over to my past self to introduce myself to myself. I was so excited I couldn't believe it. As I grew closer, he looked up at me. But the moment he did, he began to fade away. I was able to hold him in my arms for a brief second and look into his face, which also happened to be my face. I don't feel so good, he said. It's gonna be okay, kid, I replied. My past self shed a tear and then let out his last words. I love you. I love you too, I replied. Pasty Jack faded away into nothingness. Sally walked over to me and put her hand on my shoulder. I whimpered like the sad little boy I was. Then I stood up and was like, okay, that was real weird, but I'm glad that's resolved. I didn't know that's how time travel worked in this universe, but I guess that's cool. I pulled my detective hat back out from my shoe and pulled it snugly onto my head. We have some detective work to do, my lady, I said as I looked Sally in the eyes. They were brown, just like the color of my poops. Wow, I think I might have fallen in love with her at that very moment, but then I realized that now was not the time for romance. Okay, so here's the thing, Sally, I said, I'd really rather not go into Mr. Mike's house right now since I've had way too many bad experiences in that total bummer of a place. But maybe there are some clues here that I missed from before. Yeah, sure, we can look for some clues, Sally said. But since we've gone back in time, I know that my mama Miss Betty is still in the house. I don't want to jeopardize her life, and with my newly found powers of magic, I think I might be able to save her. Oh, I replied. Yeah, that'd be cool, I guess. Let's keep looking for clues right now though. Okay, she said. We spent the following 10 minutes trying to find clues, but it was super hard since the lawn was so poorly maintained we could barely see anything. Like, gee whiz, ever heard of a lawnmower or a weed whacker? Come on, my dude. Good golly. We continued to search, and I was about to give up, when suddenly I heard a sort of muffled crunch beneath my shoe. I looked more closely at the ground and found a single sunflower seed. Wow, what are the odds of this, I said. Of what? Sally asked from a few feet away. I happened across a sunflower seed shell, I replied. I licked it. It's still pickle flavored too, I said. Yeah, I found a trail of those leading away from Mr. Mike's house like 10 minutes ago but didn't say anything, Sally replied. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me, I said, completely exacerbated. You wouldn't think that a literal trail of clues might lead somewhere significant, my dude? I don't know, I just thought that maybe someone was trying to lead a raccoon into their backyard so they could keep it as a pet or something, Sally replied. There are some weird folk in this here town. Yeah, you're definitely right, bruh, I said. But for reals, I think we should follow this trail. It could lead us to their source. But what if it leads us into danger, Sally asked. I stood there for a moment and ripped a ginormous nut-busting fart. I guess that's a risk I'm willing to take, I said. I stretched my hand out towards Sally and looking straight into her freaking face I said, join me, Sally. I love you. She took one look at my hand and was like, gross dude, I'll go with you, but I ain't about to hold your nasty hand. I turned away from her and shed a single tear. Yeah, well, I was mostly just being sarcastic, I muttered. Sally and I turned away from Mr. Mike's house and followed the trail of the sunflower seed shells, feeling hopeful, anxious, and maybe even a little spooked and gassy, not entirely certain what we would find at the end of the trail. Ad break. Hey you all my nasties out there listening to this wonderful audio boom. Today's chapter is brought to you by Casio digital wristwatches. Wow, those things are mad money cash. They allow you to easily and conveniently tell the time, use a stopwatch, and set an alarm. They also have a sweet backlight for when it's dark and you're trying to tell what time it is. I always use it while I'm laying in bed so I can see what time it is when I wake up from my nightly nightmare. It's a recurring thing, so don't be too worried about it, my nasties. If you're trying to pull a lame butt prank on your mate, you could always switch the time on the watch to military time. It takes a special kind of person to get mad about something as stupid as that, but when it happens, boy oh howdy is it golden. Our next sponsor for today's episode is NBA Live 2003. Get live. It's in the hoops, y'all. Wow, this game is so fantastic. It is the greatest simulation of basketball you can get without actually stepping foot on a physical basketball court and looking like a newbie from of all the neighborhood kids. Anyway, this game is literally amazing. It has a 10 out of 10 soundtrack and you can do so many cool things in it. You can do spin moves and give your players sick nasty nicknames like Mad Change, and you can give all of your players the jersey number 69, nice. Anyway, if you don't have the game, or have never played it, I would highly recommend. It's CA's best game they have ever released. Ask your mama to buy it for you. You won't regret it. Alright my nasties, thanks for listening to our sponsors for this episode. Okay, now let's get back to the show. Sally and I followed the sunflower seed shells until we reached the end of the block. The trail ended there. Across the street was a sickly-looking but yet perfectly maintained house. Wow, that trail felt like it had been going for like at least 15 days, Sally said. I know, right? I replied, still feeling a little hurt from being rejected by her. But whose house is this? Actually, I don't recognize this part of town at all. What do you mean, Sally replied. There are literally only like 35 houses in our entire town. It's pretty small. How have you not been over here before? IDK, I guess I've really only just been within the close vicinity of my own house. Wow, nasty Jack, you really need to get out more, Sally said. No you, I replied. Lol, whatever dude, Sally said. Anyway, this is Pickle Rick's house. Wait, what? I responded. How do you know this is his house? Oh yeah, when I was doing my research about my mama, Pickle Rick fell into the mix at one point, but I couldn't really pin down how he was part of the story. But yeah, I know that this is his house because I've searched for some clues around it but couldn't find anything. It's too perfectly manicured. Wow, that's wild, I replied. But what should we do? I guess we can just try knocking on the front door, Sally said. Maybe we can throw off Pickle Rick by just being polite, and then you can get all stabby on him with that fancy dagger. Oh yeah, my girl, that might actually work, I replied. Let's give it a whirl. With that, we approached Pickle Rick's house. I was nervous out of my mind. I had already come face to face with this nutbuster of a scary child man, and I wasn't sure if I was ready to face him again. I pooped a little pop in my pants and reached out my hand to ring the doorbell. I hesitated for a moment and then pressed my pinky finger against the ringer. We waited, but there was no answer. We tried knocking, but still no answer. Not knowing exactly what to do, But still wanting to progress the story, I went to see if the door was locked. When I touched the handle, the door gently cracked open. Sally and I glanced at each other nervously. We slowly stepped through the entryway into what seemed to be the living room. It was dark and smelled of freshly burned maple wood from the fire that was crackling in the fireplace toward the back of the room. There was a tall armchair that faced the fire. I wasn't totally sure, but I thought I saw a hairy hand resting on one of the arms, sipping what looked like a tall cold glass of some good chalky milk. Wow, I love that stuff, hot dang. We took a few more steps further into the room when we suddenly heard a voice. "I've been expecting you," said the voice. It was Pickle Rick. He stood up from the armchair with his chalky milk in hand and stared at us from across the room. "Okay, how did you know we were coming?" I asked, feeling kind of annoyed to be honest. Pickle Rick gave a sinister smile. "I was drinking my hourly chalky milk and staring out my front window and watched as the two of you followed the trail of sunflower seed shells that I left for you to follow. I was literally standing in the window when you guys rang my doorbell. I don't know how you didn't see me." Wow, I was so embarrassed in that moment in front of Sally. I claimed to be this amazing detective, but I couldn't even see a hairy 6'8" man-child standing in the window. Golly wally. "Okay, well, Big Whoop," I said. "Oh, the contrary," Pickle Rick replied. He pulled out a remote from his pocket and pressed a button. Immediately 2 chairs popped up out of the floor from under Sally and I. Restraints flew out from the arms and legs of the chairs and bound us. It was all a trap. We were completely immobilized, unable to break free from the chairs that were actually really nice. They were made from like handcrafted mahogany wood or something, and the seats were oh so plush. Pickle Rick let out a maniacal laugh like this. I browned my undies, I was so scared. "You've fallen right into the palm of my hairy hands," Pickle Rick said. He chugged the remainder of his chalky milk and threw the glass on the floor. It shattered into some sharp-looking shards. He stooped down and picked one up and began walking toward us, a crazy look in his eyes. Before he could do anything, I blurted out, "We're on to you, Pickle Rick." Or should I say, Pickle Rickle. Pickle Rickle stopped. "Okay, wow, how did you know my real God-given name?" he asked. "It's kind of a long story," I replied, "but this one time you were a hologram and you told me your real name because you thought I was about to die, and then I traveled back in time a couple times, and yeah, it's all pretty wild. I'll spare you the details." "Okay, whatever," he said. "I'm still gonna kill you guys because I'm a serial killer, as you know. But since we're already talking, I might as well tell you my entire backstory. Are you ready?" "Actually, I'm kind of thirsty. Can I get a drink of water?" I asked. "Oh yeah, sure thing, my guy," said Pickle Rickle. "Be right back." He dipped into the next room and quickly returned with a cup in his hairy child hands. "I got you a crazy straw too." "Oh wow, this is so cool. How did you know I love crazy straws?" I asked. "Just a lucky guess, I suppose," replied Pickle Rickle. He giggled like this he and blushed. "I just thought it would be good to make you guys comfortable before you breathed your last breath. Anyway, may I proceed?" "Okay, sure, whatever," Sally and I both replied. Pickle Rickle took a long deep shallow breath that was like 30 seconds long and then continued. "So basically, when I was born, I was really a little bit sick. My mom would always tell me about how I would sneeze and cough and poop and burp all at the same time, like 69 times a day. My mother was frantically trying to find ways to cure me, so she turned to witchcraft and became an instant pro. Unfortunately, she was too late and I died like the oof. She used a forbidden black magic spell to bring me back to life, and it worked, but something went horribly wrong. I grew long hair all over my body, grew stronger and taller than the average man, was able to teleport, and ironically was given the curse of immortality. My mother disowned me and left me in the forest. To her demise, I returned 20 years later and killed her in spite of what she did to me. My test for blood has never ceased." "Wait, you eat the people you kill?" I asked, feeling a little nauseous and gassy. "No, it's just an expression. Geez, take an English class or something," my guy Pickle Rickle replied. He stared Sally and I in the eyes for a moment and then slowly began to make his way toward us again, the shard of glass rotating back and forth in his hand. He was upon us. He raised the shard toward my neck and said, "I love you first and then sweet little Sally." "Oh gosh no, please do not do this my guy, please don't, or I will like totally crap my pants," I replied and pulled back as far as I could in the chair that was restraining me. As I did, the chair fell backwards and the dagger slipped out of the sheath on my ankle. "What have we here?" said Pickle Rickle. He picked it up and turned it over in his hands. "Was this meant for me?" I said nothing. "Well then I guess Sally will be the first to go." Pickle Rickle turned to Sally, raised the dagger, and Sally let out a scream like this. In an instant there was a loud explosion that came from above us as the ceiling seemed to fall in. Pickle Rickle grasped the dagger tightly and teleported away as we were covered in rubble. This audiobook is copyrighted by Nasty Jack Cool Storytime Incorporated.